Hey everyone, this is Jono from Veracity with another video in my video series, this one on using xAPI extensions. And actually this video will be one of 2 or 3 videos where we get into the extension topic. We're going to just talk high level what they are and show you a few that I've created as sample data. And in later videos, at least one more video, we'll show you how you can use extensions in the Veracity LRS for all kinds of neat stuff. So what is an xAPI extension? So xAPI extensions are a way for you to add additional data to your xAPI statements. So if you followed this video series, you will be getting familiar with the xAPI statement data model, and it has a representation of things like your actor, the person who is doing the action, the object, the thing that's being interacted with, for example, the lesson or the course. And there's a set amount of data in an xAPI statement that is already specified. You may need to include additional data that is meaningful to you or your organization that doesn't have a default representation in the xAPI data model. That's what you use extensions for. There is a way that you can extend the xAPI to include your user-defined data, and in this case, it is JSON. So it can be arbitrarily complex. You can represent the data in whatever way is useful to you. So if you have arrays of information, no problem. If you have an object that has, 5 properties and associated values, fine. You can represent all of that in a JSON object. So it's pretty flexible in that you determine what the JSON looks like. Like many things in the xAPI, an IRI is used as the property name. It's used as the thing that defines your extension. And you can have more than one extension. So, having a good ID for your extension JSON is important because you might choose to have 2 or 3 different extension properties that have different data structures. So that IRI, just like with other IDs in the xAPI, is very important. And you can't just use extensions anywhere. You can't just place them anywhere in an xAPI statement. There are very specific places where you can extend the data model. Activity definition. So this is in an activities definition, as it sounds. There's an extension object, and you can describe that activity. So for example, an activity may be a lesson or a course or a video or something like that. You can create extensions that further describe that lesson or course or video. Context extensions. So these are additional information about the statement. So we already have information, contextual information about the statement in context like, is the activity that is being interacted with somehow related to other activities? Is it in a particular attempt? Is there a instructor that is relevant to this particular xAPI statement? That's already stuff that's built into context. If context does not have a data property you need, there's also extensions so you can further add data to context. And then result. So result in xAPI is things like a score, whether you've completed or not, whether you've passed or failed, the duration that it took you to get through something. It's result data. If you have additional result data that is not included in the already existing xAPI data model, you can use result extensions to represent that data. A few important considerations. 1, the activity definition extensions in the Veracity LRS specifically are canonicalized. I will link to another video that talks about canonical definitions in the LRS and what we mean by that. But in general, you are describing the activity. So you're describing the lesson. So, things like that are already included in xAPI are things like the name and description, but maybe you have a time limit or a passing score that is also information about that activity that doesn't change or usually doesn't change. So that actually gets added to the canonical definition. So when we look at that lesson, we can see this lesson has a name, a description, it has a passing score, and it has a specific time limit that you need to have it done in. And those are canonicalized. That's the definition for that object. So I could talk a lot about that, but I will just put a link in this video to canonical and how it works in the LRS and why that's important. These other two, context and result extensions, are not canonicalized, so it's expected that these may change in different statements. So when one user sends a statement, you might have certain values for context or result extensions, and then they may change for the next user. And I'll show you examples here in just a minute about what these look like in the actual data. So let's go ahead and jump into a demo. I have a demo LRS here called Demo 2. We've used this in a couple of recent videos, and I'm just going to go right into the statement viewer. I've sort of pre-populated some data with extensions. You can use that xAPI lab tool that we've used in other videos to do this yourself. And I'm going to focus on two different things. This example activity and lesson XYZ are the two things that we're going to focus on. Let's first start with lesson XYZ, and I'm just going to open up the raw data at first here. Let me zoom in a little bit, make that a little bit easier to read. Okay, great. So as you can see, typical structure, actor, verb, object. Our object has a definition right here, but let me grab my highlighter. Right here you can see we have object, definition, extensions. Our extension name is this IRI. Remember, they're identified by an IRI, and in this case it is a JSON object. See, there's two brackets that have three values: max time, scaled passing score, and an internal lesson code. So this is additional data about this lesson. Those are extensions that describe this thing because they're part of the definition of that object. So that makes sense. So these are the ones that are canonicalized. So when we have the canonical definition of what is lesson X, Y, and Z, it will include the data with these extensions. If we look, let me turn off my highlighter. If we look at the next person, we're just looking at Testerson. I don't know, let's look at Billy K. And we look, Billy K has the same extensions that have the same values. Max time is still 5 hours, scaled passing score is still 0.85, and the internal code that my organization uses for whatever reason for this lesson is the same as the other ones. It may be the case that, next year you change the scaled passing score for some reason, but in general, these values should not change. And again, I'll link to that canonical lesson. It's important stuff. Let's go down to this example activity. In fact, I'll just filter back on it a little bit here. And let's take a look at context and result extensions, where that was activity definition. Let's open Mike Gordon here, and just like before, we have actor, verb, and object. The object is kind of a standard object that, in this case, it's a question, so it has information about the choices. This is a multiple choice question, has 3 options. And notice that our third option here is other, so they can pick option 1, option 2, or other. Well, other in this case, I'm making up this use case because I've just created this data, but if I choose other, I have a text box to enter in data. Well, if I look at the typical result object, let me highlight it. Our result has a response, and in this case, it's other. We know they chose the other text box, but I don't have a place natively in xAPI to put other data that the learner included. So in this case, we have an extension. This is the name of the extension. The ID of the extension is this IRI. It has 2 values in an object, other text and format. This is the text that this user put in. And then in this case, we're saying, maybe they have a way to change the format. In this case, we say it was HTML. So you can see where this result extension, unlike the activity definition extensions that we were just looking at, will change. So if we go to our next user, Paige McConnell, and we scroll down, we can see that Paige also chose the other text box, but his other text is, I'm not sure what to put here, and instead of HTML, it's plain text. So this is not canonicalized because it's describing, this person's result. It will be expected to be different every time. Therefore, not canonicalized, and you get an idea of what it looks like. Let's go down to the next person, and let's scroll down below the result, and let's open up context. Here we have, again, extensions. In this case, some information about user device and entry point. They use the Microsoft Surface Pro 3, and the entry point, I guess, to this lesson was a performance support menu. So they clicked, a button in a menu. If we go down to our next person, we scroll down to context, we'll see we have some other extensions here. User device and entry point again. This time, same thing. So Microsoft Surface Pro 3 performance support menu. Let's go down, I don't know, pick somebody down even further. Scrolling down. Hopefully we get different values here to make my point. There we go. Extensions, user device, iPad Pro, entry point, AI recommendation. So instead of choosing this from a menu, it was made as a recommendation via a bot or something. So you get the idea. Just like result extensions, this isn't about the result. This is additional contextual information about the statement, but it could change based on every user. In this case, user device, and how they got to this lesson may change. Again, sample data, so you can imagine the different types of things that you might have here. I'm not going to get too much into this, but just to show you, let me just go right back to the default view here, and I'm going to zoom out. Looking at that raw data can be pretty tough. We have some sessions. Again, I'll put a link on the statement viewer. The extensions that you choose will automatically show up in these interfaces. So if I wanted to add a custom field, for example, let's just do, what did we look at last? Context extensions. Context extensions, you'll see it has my ID. This is the ID of my extension, so I'll choose that. And look, it has the two values, entry point and user device. Let's choose user device, and let's add the field. Let me rearrange this a little bit so you can see. Let me filter it by the content that has that extension. There you go. So now you can see we can actually show that in a report. These are the devices that were used by these people when they actually, answered this multiple choice question. We can even do a spread up here using the spread operator, and we can see these are all the different devices that we had that answered this question. It looks like the Microsoft Surface Pro 3 in this case was the most popular. We have 5 answers with that, where we have 3 with the other 2. So this is just the beginning of what you can do with extensions, and this video has already gotten pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this one for today. We will continue this concept in some future videos, so tune in next week. If you like these videos, please click the like button or thumbs up button, or click that subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.